All right, welcome to some different bits with me. Recording from the great outdoors of Florida. I'm here next to a nice lake, Lake Jessup. I'm gonna show you here real quickly. You can see some birds doing their thing. Hopefully, this video doesn't end up being a Florida man gets eaten by an alligator while YouTubing. So let's hope not. And today we're going to be talking about how to deal within iLEAPP, your iOS processing, how to deal with artifacts that are behave differently depending on the version of iOS. Right? You might have a database that has a query that's applicable to iOS 9, 10, and then another same database, another query that goes 10 to 11, and then maybe another query that goes to 13 or whatever it is. Same database, different schemas, different queries. So there's different ways to approach it. You could do an artifact for each, and I guess you could do that, but it's hard. It's not as efficient, right? You will be doing more processing. You'll be getting errors where something doesn't run because it's not applying. So the best way of doing it is to leverage the ability that iLEAPP gives you to identify the iOS version and then execute the queries on the databases as proper. So let's get into it. Nope, I opened the wrong one. Like I said, let's get into it. All right. So this video depends a lot on you, the viewer, having reviewed the first video on how to make an artifact in iLEAPP. With that knowledge, then all this will make sense. Without that knowledge, it will be kind of hard to follow along. So I'm making that assumption. So as you might remember from the last video, the iLEAPP artifacts script is the traffic cop of the program. It tells execution what artifacts should run and in what order. For iOS versioning to work, for you to leverage that, the first artifact you need to run is this one here, last build.py. Okay, it contains where the last build info plist is and the category iOS build. And this plist is what tells us what iOS version it is, version 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, whatever, right? For this example, instead of using our long list, I made a short to search, smaller traffic cop here, where we're gonna run last build to get the version and then run a artifact that will leverage that version. We'll use it for our purposes. But this is important. This always has to be first. And again, it makes sense. If you need iOS version, you need to get it before you apply it. Simple enough. That's done. Actually, let me just show you the contents of last build in case you're curious. What I'm doing is we're opening that plist, and then we take, for example, the key that's product version that we're interested, and we save it in a variable, right? And it's saved for that runtime, and it's iOS version. Easy enough, right? So now, how do we use it? I'm gonna use an artifact from Knowledge C called install. And this is really important, and I will always say it every time I bring this up. I'm in great debt to Sarah Edwards and her Apollo scripts and the modules that she maintains. This is a titanic amount of work that she does. I done verification on it, and just the verification is a lot of work. Her to develop it, my hat's off to her. I'm in her debt. I appreciate her work. We all should. And what I'm doing is pretty much going into one of her modules. You'll see all these different queries that she parses and that I'm leveraging from her. And if we look at the one that we're examining, it will be Knowledge C, the app install list. And notice how there's a query for iOS 12 to 13, and then one for 11. All right? Simple as that. Okay? So how we're gonna approach that? Here's our artifact. And you need to add 3 lines, just 3 lines to make this work. The first one here is going to be here on line number 6. In case of this artifact, import scripts.artifact.rglobals. That's where our iOS version value is from the last build script when it executed previously in the runtime, in the run. And again, look at it here, right? I did that. I moved it. Here it is. I moved it in here. So now that we know the value is there, the next script can go and get it but we need to import it so we can get it. Second thing you need to do is packaging. And why is packaging that library important? Well, it lets you be able to make comparisons. For example, maybe you want to run the query only on iOS 12 to 12.2 or 12.15, I don't know. But with packaging, it's easy to make those comparisons. You don't have to worry about iOS 12.5.3 and think, how do I deal with this number to make sure that it understands that 12.1.2 is smaller than anything else, right? Packaging does that for you, okay? So you put that there, really easy. And the third thing you need to do is call the value, the version, and use it. What you do is you go and you pull it from here and you name it iOS version. Again, you can call it whatever you want. That's the how I like to call it, because it's pretty obvious what it is. So let's assume that last build said, well, it's 13.2, whatever. Then that 13.2 gets moved into iOS version, and then I can do comparisons like the one down here. All right, so this comparison here, if our version is larger or equal than 12, and I think, let me see if I did this right. Yep, right. So remember, if it's 12 or above or 13, we're gonna execute that, okay? And it will run the query. Else, it's gonna run that query. And to make this even more precise, what I should have done is actually put here, else if version, then equals 11 and or no, minor than 12, then execute. But I did that as an else for the example. Okay, and that's it. So you notice that it takes into account the version, it runs one query, else runs another query, and that's it. And obviously at report generation time, you also have to take that into account. Of course, this is how I do it. You could decide to order this differently, but you as the coder, as the programmer, as the one making the artifact, the only things that you really need are these three: import, where the value is, packaging, so you can manage manage the versioning, and then pull out the iOS version so you can use it, and then use it. Heck, this if, you might not want an if, you might want something else to do your control. And that's it. And that's it. So let's run it. Let's run the example. I like using the graphical interface for demos here. So we're taking again Josh Hickman's excellent public testing images for iOS. Let's put this in our output directory and let's let it rip. All right, so we have two artifacts: the artifact for to pull out the iOS version, and the artifact for the knowledge C, the app installs. And what you'll see on the screen output in a second is you'll see the version number there, and then you'll see the next artifact be run and take leverage. So you can see it here. You see it's an iOS 13.4.1, and then knowledge C executes. So let's look at the report. So we got our build information. Here we go, product version. And the proper query for iOS 13 version was executed. And that's that. Actually, since we're on it, let me show you how I leverage this, like big time. Like I mentioned in the last video, instead of running each knowledge C artifact separately because it takes time, I combine them all into one big script. And the trick for me to do that is because I have versioning available to me. Let's use the knowledge C all script for as an example, and you can do this obviously at home as you're going through it. Knowledge that I import the variables, like I said, I import packaging, and I start using it. So my first artifact, right, I start using it here, I get the iOS version, and I do my if. So it's this version, 11 to 9, right? It's minus than version 12. Then I want to do these things, and then I run this artifact. And that's fine, and it's great. But then the next artifact, it says, okay, well, actually this artifact, this one here, is, well, if it's iOS version 12 or above, then I want to execute this other artifact now. And it executes this artifact. What about this one? What if the version, again, is it 12 or above? And I go through each artifact executing and using these conditionals, these controls, to put them all in one query so it runs quick and working off of one data source pool. And that's it. Again, if there's any questions, feel free to reach out to me on Twitter or my blog or my email. And that's that. Hopefully that helps. Bye for now.